Hey, this is Kirk Walden, and welcome to Coffee with Kirk on the Pregnancy Help Podcast. And once again, we have a splash of Jenn. And Jenn, as I'm going to say that right, I think we need to clarify that a little bit.
Yeah, because our producer for this podcast, Miss Lauren Bell, thank you, Lauren, for all that you do. She reached out to us and she said, hey, you guys, this was funny, but the last transcript of the podcast, it said a cup of coffee with Kirk and a splash of Jenn, G-I-N. Not Jenn, J-E-N-N.
So we need to clarify. There's nothing extra here in the podcast booth today. It's just she and me and a glass of water if we need it. But we are having a good time. And so if there's a lot of laughter, nothing extra going on there. Look, we're going to dive in deep today.
Yeah.
This is part 2 of Opposites Attract. And I want to preface this because what we're trying to do with you through this podcast is build culture, give you tools to build culture, because we believe great culture produces great outcomes, right?
Correct. Absolutely.
Good. But as we talk about this last month, we talked about how different doesn't mean difficult. You and I are wired differently. And while this is not a marriage counseling session for you and me, we did do some of that as we were preparing for this.
Yes, we did. It was a little tough because I think we realized we are very different, just like we expressed in last podcast. Like, I'm the Chihuahua, you're the Golden Retriever, and we had fun with that. But the reality is, in a marriage, that can, when we hit conflict, that can get really tough for us. Like, we've really had to grow and learn together about conflict in our marriage.
Well, and as we've been working on projects together, we realized how we were talking about it last month, how when we talk about, say, the working genius, I'm more the galvanizer, tenacity, all that kind of stuff, and you're more the wanderer. So we talked about that last month. You can go back and listen to that one. But as we've worked on projects, writing Saving Samaria, we're working on different things now regarding that. We've realized that we have to work through the conflicts of being different. And it's the same thing with our ministry teams. We have to deal with the fact that we do come from different perspectives, but the goal is not that we talk about how different we are, but how we mesh that and bring unity to the table.
100%. And one of the things that I think is really important here, and I think this is true in a marriage relationship, it's true in a ministry team, that it has to be built on trust. I have to trust that when we're in conflict and we're not in agreement with something as a husband and wife, that we trust each other. Like, I trust that you're for my good. I assume when we're in conflict, it's not because you're malicious or mean or out to get me. It's because we want the same things, which means we also have the same mission.
And we do have the same mission, and we talk about projects we're working on together. We often have coffee in the morning out on the deck. It'll be 5:30, 6 o'clock, and we're talking about different projects we're working on. And we're talking about how we come at them from different directions. Our ministry team does come at projects and endeavors and challenges and missions in different ways, but we have to come together. And so trust is huge in that.
And I wish in the future we could do a podcast just on how you build trust within a team. I think that's such an important concept. But for now, just know that if you don't have trust, if you don't have your mission first and foremost right in front of you through where everything is being filtered through that mission, or you just don't understand your team, you guys have never taken time to really figure each other out. Like, I don't care what the tool is. There's so many good ones, but if it's, Working Genius, or like we said, the Kathleen Edelman book that was just fabulous. These are just to me, they're quick and easy tools to understand your team, right? So if you haven't done those things, then I would say, stop, do those things. They're critical. Okay. So we're assuming you have trust within your team. We're assuming your mission is front and clear, very easy. And we're also assuming that you've taken time to really understand each other as a team. Okay. As we go into this whole conversation about conflict.
So we go back and say, okay, what tools are we using to better understand each other? And Jen, you mentioned a couple, and I think about the Intermetrics Advanced Insights profile and those type of things that we might use. And let's get that so that we can build trust, because when trust is high, the questions that people are asking, they don't seem like attacks, and we're not fighting each other. There's a lot less conflict. Feedback doesn't feel personal. It's something that we can work on together. And challenges don't feel like rejection. They feel like opportunities.
Right.
And I want to make sure that as a team, we have that trust.
And can I say, like, onboarding is a critical part of this. And if you have felt like your onboarding for your team is not particularly strong, I recommend going back and doing like a full onboarding for your entire team to reset culture and mission and make sure you are together.
Let's think about what builds trust. Let's go back. Assuming the best. Say whatever we need to say and get it out there so we can walk through it. Keeping our promises. Hey, and when I make a mistake, I need to own it. Right. I don't need to defend it. I had a guy many years ago when I was in conflict with another person. He said, Kirk, you need to fire your defense attorney. And I was like, what does that mean? But it took me about 15 seconds, and I realized that I was so busy defending myself, and I was probably right on a lot of things. But when I'm so busy trying to defend myself, I miss an opportunity to negotiate through and resolve the conflict. So, and when we own our own mess and fire our defense attorneys, and we go first and extend the olive branch, create an engagement, whatever it is, we can build that trust.
And, there's been so much work done on trust building and vulnerability. And, there are a lot of different sources that support that idea out there. But yeah, as if you're a leader, if you're a director, how are you being vulnerable for your team? When you make a mistake, are you just saying, oh guys, I'm so sorry. I didn't handle that well. Those are the kinds of things that I think are critical to the ability to have healthy conflict. And so very important.
Can I raise my hand with one more, little story to toss in there? I was a member of a church many years ago back in Alabama when I was there. We're in Nashville now. But we had decided to build a new sanctuary on our current property. And our leadership of the church had put it before the church for the vote and all this. So we voted for it. It was a great idea. We're going to go get it. Well, when they went to the planning commission of our town, planning commission turned it down. Not enough green space, not enough this. And there was no way around it. It just wasn't going to happen. But the leadership of the church had already come to us and said, we believe God is calling us to do this. And we had voted for it. And now we weren't getting there. They realized, you know what, this isn't going to work. And they came back to us, the leadership did, and said, we're going to ask you to vote again. We messed up. We thought this was God's will. It wasn't, obviously, because it's been shut down and we cannot grow where we are. We had 3 morning services and they're all packed and it was whatever. Well, they decided to move to a new location, but because they came to us and it was our leadership, our team, but because our leadership said, we made a mistake. We said, we're with you. It was they dropped any wall of, well, the town council did this, no, they weren't. They were going to own it themselves, own the mess, builds trust.
Okay. So let's kind of recap what we've been saying, and then let's get into models of conflict and types of conflict and where we want to go as a ministry team within conflict. One of the things that I think was a huge eye opener for me, even within our marriage, was a lot of times we look at, if we were looking at a, what do you call it? When you're pulling the rope on either side?
Tug of war?
Tug of war.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times the rope can feel like the problem, and you're on either side of the problem tugging at the problem on opposite ends. You're not pulling together, you're pulling apart. And one of the things I think for me that I've started really trying to think before we enter any kind of conversation that feels hard is like, what is the actual problem? Define it, name it in my head, and then realize, no, I'm going to be on that side with you. We're going to be pulling together wherever we're going. And it really helps me center myself on, because we're in the same team. We have the same mission. All the things we're talking about, I trust him. All the things we're talking about are in place.
And if I could add something here, we are talking about our marriage, yes. But what we're really talking about is how do you and I engage as a team as we have ministry projects we're working on together? Because we want this to directly translate to you and your team. So if I could just throw that out as a
super important
qualifier.
Super important. Okay. So conflict.
Let's talk about it.
Okay. One, I think that's very important is that conflict is biblical and it is important and it can be a sign of good spiritual maturity.
Right. It is not a thing to be avoided. And that's kind of where I come from a little bit.
Yeah. It's funny. We both come from kind of I think an unhealthy view of conflict.
True.
And that can come out in unhealthy ways for us, but then we'll talk through that.
No, the reason we want to bring this out is because we both do come from totally different backgrounds on conflict. And I think that your entire ministry has different people that are coming from a different shade of this.
Right.
But I think we are both on the total opposite sides of this.
Right. Which may help because then you can see two very different views of conflict and how it can affect your team. In the middle of conflict, there is health. It's, like there was conflict in the Bible, right? There was conflict between the apostles at times. There was conflict. Jesus clearly had conflict with people that was good and healthy and needed. Good conflict helps us grow. Good conflict helps us change. But on the other extremes, we have what would we call these different types of conflict? You can have.
I'm going to go with mine first. Is that okay? Artificial harmony is me. And if I can, and again, you could be in different one of these gray areas. I'm all the way on that side of artificial harmony, which is if I'm not walking in the Spirit, and this is so important, we need to be walking in the Spirit. If I'm not, I'm going to lean toward wanting, hey, let's just all get along. I'm going to sweep things under the rug. These little issues, I'm going to sweep them under the rug. I'm going to go silent when somebody brings up conflict, and I just don't want to talk about it. And I will walk away and just go do my thing because I don't want to wrestle with things when I'm not walking in the Spirit. Okay?
Yeah.
So,
and just to be real honest about knowing you, you're busy and you're like, I've got a million things on me right now and I don't want to deal with conflict. I don't want to deal with challenge. I think that's a very common challenge for you.
I would rather check off the next thing. And you know what? Hopefully this conflict will be resolved at some point. It doesn't mean that we just step in and go for it every time there's a conflict, but there is that when I'm erring, I'm going to err on that side of just sweep it under the rug.
And if you're familiar with Working Geniuses, Kirk, one of his geniuses is tenacity. He is a very big check it off, get it done. I mean, you are.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I can tend to procrastinate at times, but I do want to get it done.
You kill me because I'm thinking you procrastinate about what? What do
I don't want to talk about it. That would cause conflict.
Exactly. But
let's talk about you.
You're a very disciplined person, I think, overall, even though you are my golden retriever who likes to rest. The truth is you are a very tenacious person on your checklist and getting things done. And that is a great trait about you, but it can also prevent good conflict from happening.
Yes. And let's just put a wrap on this artificial harmony person. This person avoids conflict. We just talked about that. Doesn't say the hard thing, would rather not because is afraid that it's just going to ramp up the conflict. Smiles in the meeting, which is a good thing to do, but when there's conflict, just smiles, let's move on. But here's the other thing. could be that person who complains afterwards and
Mm-hmm.
has the meeting after the meeting, which is one of the most dangerous things we can do,
Mm-hmm.
is we have a meeting where there's something that comes up that can be conflict and doesn't say anything, but then goes out of the meeting and finds a Confederate and complains to them, talks to them about this and says, well, so-and-so shouldn't have said that. That's for sure. And those sorts of things. This can be a real, this can blow up on us.
That's very damaging to your culture. But what about this? Okay. And you've seen me do this before. At work, I may be smiling and everything's great. And then I come home and where am I gonna talk about it? Where am I gonna have the meeting after the meeting?
Yeah.
With you?
Yeah. That can happen too.
But I would say this, if I'm not willing to confront, challenge, and the actual space where something can change about it, where something can happen, then that's damaging. That is artificial harmony.
Yeah.
Our son worked for Dave Ramsey.
Yes.
And one of the rules, it was cool to learn about Dave Ramsey's culture at his work, in that work environment. And one of the things he says is like, do not talk to someone about a problem or challenge or conflict unless they can actually do something about it.
Right.
And that was a rule for their culture. And I think, when it comes to conflict and challenge, are you talking to everybody but the team or the group or the person that can do something about it?
And that's what an artificial harmony person can do.
Yeah.
Now let's flip that.
Okay.
Because there's the other person who's like, I want to confront the conflict. I want to attack the conflict. Tell me about that person.
Well, he says with resignation because it's me. And I think that, back to our Chihuahua comparison, like I would like to think that I'm not someone who's mean-spirited within conflict, but I think it is a problem when I don't feel heard within a challenge or I don't feel like something's being effectively addressed, because what I will tend to do is get louder or more emotional. It's like on the one side of my guy here being an artificial harmony person, if I feel like I'm sensing that or feeling like, oh, we're not really dealing with this, we're just going to gloss it over, it just will rev something in me that's not good. And I can end up being very destructive in conflict, right?
Yeah, it
Feel
does.
free. You won't hurt my feelings. You can talk about it.
I don't want to talk about it. No, I'm just kidding. But it can be destructive because the people who are on the other side are kind of not as far over on that spectrum will tend to shut down. And we're not resolving the conflict. Right. It's just out there and we're not getting to a conclusion, which is interesting because either side of this, either extreme will get us to, will not lead us to a conclusion.
Correct. And I think about things like on the other side of the harmony, the destructive type of conflict we can engage in can be like, I start making it personal. Well, you just don't care. Or, we can just make a lot of unfair assumptions in our mind about someone. It can literally attack people. And I think we've all seen that happen. And that's never healthy. It does lead to not just conflict within the meeting, but that can bleed outside of the meeting. So there's gossiping happening and that kind of thing. We can label another person.
Yep.
And say, well, you're this, you're that, you don't care, blah, blah, blah.
That's a big one. You don't care or you don't want to deal with the tough things, whatever it happens to be.
Mm-hmm. And then this one's really hard, but you can, and I think a lot of people, if you can relate to this type of conflict, there can just be to the point where you just want to win. You've gotten past really looking at a challenge and you just want to win. You just want your point to make it. And that's not healthy, obviously. I don't even feel like I have to tell you that isn't good.
Yeah. Well, it gets us to a point to where, okay, we've seen what's unhealthy. Both of these extremes. What is healthy conflict? What does that look like? And I think number one, and I'll let you just jump in wherever you want, but number one is a healthy conflict looks at the fact that people are not the problem necessarily. I'm not saying there isn't someone who could be a problem in our ministry, but if we assume the best, that's the last place we're going to go. We start with people are not the problem. The problem is the problem, right?
Love that. Yes. So you got to identify that problem.
That's right. That's right.
And I think that's part of your role. If you're an executive director, when you go into a space for meetings, and you should be a big proponent of really defining the challenges of your ministry, of your team. That should be one of your jobs that you look at, like, I'm going to define this for our team.
And get the team together on the same page. It may mean having a conversation. Okay, let's talk about what the problem is here. Let's dive deep down until we know what the problem is.
Can you give an example for our directors and teams out there of, like, what is a problem that a ministry could be facing where conflict would be rising?
Well, I think one of them could be as simple as marketing. We're not reaching enough clients. Now we have a problem. Well, I don't like how we're doing our Google ads or whatever it is, but we're not identifying the one issue that we're trying to tackle. We're talking about whether we should do a billboard, or whether we're using Google ads, or whether we're using AI, or whether we're using social media. And we're battling through all of those things, looking at pieces of the problem instead of saying, okay, we're all on the same page, right? Our mission is to reach that woman who is thinking her only answer is to end the pregnancy. That's our mission. Now let's identify the problem. We're not reaching enough of them. And instead of fighting over the minutia, let's talk about big picture and brainstorm how we can get there.
Yeah. And hopefully that gives you just one example of, like, there's all kinds of conflict that can happen within our ministries, all kinds. And so hopefully you have been able to kind of pinpoint one type of challenge your ministry has faced and look at conflict through that lens. Yeah. So then what would healthy conflict look like? We've identified the problem.
Yeah. Well, we just mentioned one. Brainstorming is our way of seeking real solutions. How do we do that? But at the same time, as we do that, let's assume everyone in the room has positive intent. We've got to make sure that if we're going to maintain our unity as a culture, we start by saying they want the best for this too.
Yeah. And I don't know that we have time to talk about it today, but in the future, I think we can talk about how do you make sure your team has consensus moving forward, so you don't have after your team meeting, you don't have all this junk happening, like,
after meetings
and all the gossip or drama that can sometimes happen when people don't really feel heard. But we can talk about that later. But I think hopefully we're presenting, like, ways we can deal with conflict as a team that aren't healthy, and what it can look like to be in the center when we're all focused on the challenge together.
And as we close this session, it looks like there's going to be another one on this, because we've got to dive in a little bit deeper. But what we want to do is, as we just said, people are not the problem is the problem. But this shifts us from this me versus you conflict to it's us versus the problem.
Right. And I was thinking about the 3 types of ways we can handle conflict. And each time we're trying to protect something, right?
Right.
When we are the harmony person, we're trying to protect our comfort a lot of times. We just don't want to feel uncomfortable.
That's me.
Yep.
Can be me.
When we get on the other extreme of that, then we're protecting our egos sometimes. We just want to win, or we feel like we've made it personal somehow. And that's obviously, we want to avoid that at all costs. But in the middle of real healthy conflict, we're protecting the mission. And that's worth some conflict, isn't it?
It is. Protecting the mission is worth it. And whatever the conflict, whatever the challenge is, we are asking together, how do we fix this? If we can get to that point where we're together, we are well on our way to, as we are opposites who attract, we are moving toward resolving any conflicts and getting where we need to go to solve whatever the challenge happens to be. And we're willing to ask those hard questions.
Yeah. So I think about, like, as we're closing.
Yes.
I think it's kind of a freeing idea to think that, the strongest teams aren't the one with the least conflict.
No.
The strongest marriages aren't necessarily the ones with the least conflicts.
Yeah, the strongest ones are when they look at conflict together or challenges together and fight through the conflict as a unified team.
Yeah.
Whether that team is two people in a marriage, whether it's a team that is working on a problem together as a ministry, we're working on it together. It's us versus the problem, and we're unified no matter what.
And our trust helps us realize, our trust in one another helps us realize that conflict makes us wiser, not weaker.
Ooh, that's good.
Isn't that good?
Yeah, that's very good.
Thank you.
Well, I'm just trying to keep harmony here. But, but hey, that's it for this month. We're going to dive into this a little bit more next month. But thanks for being with us. We look forward to talking to you next month on Coffee with Kirk with a splash of Jenn, Jenn.